Okay, this is a quick walk through paper question 2 on paper 1. By this point in the exam, you will have already read the whole extract a couple of times if necessary to make sure you fully understand it, and you'll have done a short question 1 that lists 4 things. That's a nice little warm up. For this one, they are making it as straightforward as possible. They are going to reprint the extract that you are focusing on. So they'll print that onto the paper so you can't get the wrong bit, and they'll give you a very clear focus. How does the writer use language here too? And then in this case we've got describe the house. It could be describe the character, build setting, create tension. So it's really important that you read this bit clearly so you know your focus, because if you quote anything that is not relevant to that, you're not going to be picking up marks. You're also really helpfully given 3 bullet points, but please note that you could include, now obviously you do want to code effect on word choice and language features. The could is probably more to do with this sentence structure. I would advise, if you could find something great to say about complex sentences and their effect, or simple sentences, brilliant. But if you can't, it's best avoiding that one. There's no point making bad, pointless comments. Alright, so if you spot something that you really think has a big effect in terms of sentence structure, fantastic. But you get no marks really for just spotting types of sentences. So have a read through, and we're looking for a description of the house then. There was Manderley, our Manderley. I'm just going to line next. That's an interesting choice of pronoun. Let's give us a hint of somebody else involved there by being plural. Secret and silent as it had always been, the grey stone shining in the moonlight of my dream. Now we've got a lot, hopefully you've noticed, of these S sounds here. Fine if you call it alliteration, but the more precise term for that is sibilance. Now we're going to come back to what we need to write about this in a second. Secret and silent could possibly present, we've got a bit of personification there as well. Time could not spoil the beauty of those walls, nor of the place itself, as it lay like a jewel in the hollow of a hand. Hopefully you have spotted when we've got a nice straightforward technique here of a simile. Again, we're going to come back and look at the effect in a second. The grass sloped down towards the sea, which was a sheet of silver, more of that lovely sibilance, lying calm towards the moon. Now obviously the grass is not a sheet of silver, but as we've got no like or as of this time, we've got a metaphor. Like a lake though, however, we do have a simile. Like a lake undisturbed by storm or wind. I turned again to the house and I saw that the garden had run wild, just as the woods had done. Weeds were everywhere. But moonlight can play strange tricks with the imagination, even with a dreamer's imagination. As I stood there, I could swear that the house was not an empty shell, but lived and breathed as it had lived before. Light came from the windows, the curtains blew softly in the night air, and there in the library, the door stood half open as we'd left it, with my handkerchief on the table beside the bowl of autumn flowers. Right, so I got carried away with the reading there. Beautiful extract. We've got a range of things going off here, haven't we? So, weeds were everywhere. Now, I talked about sentence structure only if we can spot something. Now this is a very short, simple sentence. Remember, when we're talking about sentence structures, we are not talking about necessarily length, but the type. So it's a simple sentence. We can talk about length, but we just need to combine it with what kind of sentence it is. Weeds were everywhere, but mules can play a trick. And so it lived and breathed. Now obviously, as we are probably aware, a house can neither live nor breathe, so we've got personification there. Now what you'll notice as I've started my initial pick out is that I focused on this bullet point here. I think for me that is the strongest one. It's one where you're going to get more depth and detail. But as we come to the analysis now, we're going to bring in the words and phrases one. So now it's point to look at what you've underlined. This will be my first tip. Read it through, and as you're going through, underlining, just picking out, right, what have we got? And then obviously you've got to start talking about the effect. The structure we're using when we write this question is a T paragraph. So we're going to identify our technique, trying to use as precise terminology as we can. We're going to put in our evidence, and then we are going to talk about the effect. Okay, and this is the bit obviously where you are getting your marks from. So let's have a look at what we've underlined. Sibilant. We've got lots of it throughout this. Secret, silent, stone, shining. So what we've got to contemplate now is, well, what is the point of that? Why all these S sounds? And we're trying not to imply that it's pure coincidence. So secret, silent. Remember, this is a dream. So that sibilant is creating a really kind of soft sound. Always interesting to think about how sometimes it can be really harsh and snake-like, but this isn't. It's also like a shushing, a secret, silent stone, shining. So it's creating that kind of really soft shh sound, alright, which is mimics the silence that we're talking about, doesn't it? And even if you don't agree with me, it's always good to look for a nice, cheesy effect that we think sounds are creating. As long as what you're saying about the sound created links to the mood of your piece, you can't really go wrong. So we can talk about how the soft sh and s sound mimics the silence of the place and also gives it a dreamlike quality. Now we might have not have time, remember, for 8 marks to talk about every single one of these. So I'm looking here, layered like a jewel in the hollow of a hand. So if you think about a hand, ignore the gross cut I did, dropped a glass. We can see like a jewel in the hollow of a hand. There's something very protective about that. So we've got the idea of it being very precious. And that also links here with silver, which is a precious metal. So what we can see is kind of links between two, which really helps get high marks. Like a jewel in the hollow of the hand. In a hollow, really just something that is protective, loved, looked after. So I'm thinking that's a really good one for me to go for, because I can see lots of detail about it as well. Sorry, I'm going all wonky now, drop my pen. So if I was thinking, well, do I go for like a lake undisturbed or like a jewel in the hollow of a hand? For me, I'm thinking jewel. I'm going to talk much more about the preciousness, but also the protective nature of her wanting to protect this memory of the house. So that's giving me loads more to talk about than a lake. And I can link it with a sheet of silver, which is again emphasising the preciousness of it. So I would be thinking, I'm going to go for my sibilants. Lots I can say there. I'm going to go for this simile, and I'm going to link it to that metaphor because they're both about preciousness. And then what am I going to talk about? Well, weeds were everywhere. That short sentence, it really does juxtapose the rest of this because it's been very beautiful and descriptive. So what I can do is I do have an effect of my short sentence, therefore I probably would talk about it. And so we've had this kind of lovely, precious description, kind of calm and peaceful and beautiful. And then suddenly we've got this simple sentence, weeds were everywhere. Now weeds are much more negative. They suggest about things being corrupted and polluted, which is complete opposite to this beautiful image of the jewel that we've had previously. And so I think I probably would talk about that in this one, short simple sentence, and how it kind of changes the mood slightly here. And that's what we're always thinking about, what's going on with mood, what's happening. As I stood there, I could swear that the house was not in shell, but lived and breathed as it had lived before. Lights came on, curtains blew. And there's kind of a magical quality here, isn't there? Which we could certainly refer to, because we've got this, again, it makes it kind of dreamlike. I've just put this bit about autumn flowers. Now autumns are really interesting in a sense because it's a season where things start to die. Sorry for people who are loving autumn, it is my favourite, but kind of if you're thinking about symbolically, that's when all the trees and plants and things in nature die, which is a bit more negative. And we could possibly link that with the notion of weeds, so things that start off positive, there's a sense of calmness, but then that negativity coming in again with our autumn flowers. We've kind of got a little bit of a juxtaposition there between the two. So we've got a hint of negative. So when I start putting my question together now, and obviously you need to do it quite a bit quicker than this in the exam, how does he use language to start the house? So I'm going to start off with that sense of mystery, and I'm going to talk about my sibilants. We're going to look at being precious and beautiful. And I'm going to put in the simile. And then I'm going to put the hints of negativity. And that's when I'm going to look at the short sentence, short simple sentence. And the symbolism of the flowers. Now I said you would do this, words and phrases, and you do this as part of your answer. So if we now start looking at the words that we picked out, so in our sibilants, secret, silence, they're both adjectives, and so we just build that into our description. So we don't necessarily have to do a whole section on adjectives, or you might find that you want to do that. Verbs would be particularly interesting. I look at these nouns, jewel, silver, which give that sense of positivity. Again, the noun weed, which hints at negativity. So you build these in to each other rather than necessarily dealing with them separately. If I want to do a personification one, I would be focusing on verbs: lived, breathed, came, blew softly, that nice adverb there, which suggests a kind of sense of life. So you the best way of doing it is to build these all together and look at the whole picture that is being created. Okay, and that's what you need to be doing in your exam, working your way through. You want at least 3 good paragraphs. That's your aim. You don't necessarily need to cover everything, as long as you're covering the range of moods that are created. So if there's positives and negatives, you need to kind of focus on both of those and bring those through. And try and think about the overall mood that's trying to be created here. So we've got the sense of mystery, juxtaposing something precious with these hints of negativity, and because we're told that this is from the beginning of the book, that creates a sense of intrigue for the reader. Okay, so we want to know what on earth has gone off on Manderley, and so I'd bring that into the end of my paragraph. Okay, so you just need to follow that process in the exam, which is coming up very, very soon. Identify anything that's relevant to the actual question, effects, really thinking about what it is creating, and following this structure. So the writer uses sibilants to create a sense of mystery. Here's some quotations, talk about the effect. He uses the simile to suggest the place is precious and beautiful, talk about it in a bit more detail, really pick on the words. He uses short simple sentences to give a hint of negativity, evidence and effect. Simple.